What's up, guys? I know how you love supercars and I know how you love dirty supercars. This one right here takes the cake. Now, this is a 2003 BMW Z8. Now, overall, they made about 5,500 of them, and 2,500 or so were sent to the United States. Now, what makes this interesting is this is an Alpina, even more rare. They only made 555. This one right here is number 493. I'll show you on the back of the key. Now, what takes the cake for me is this was left outside, I think, of his house or his estate or whatever for approximately 4 to 5 years from what I'm being told. Now, it was driven a whole lot before then and it wasn't clean. So who knows the history of this, but I can tell you this car is disgusting. There's actually mold inside, there's cigarette ash and all kinds of funky things. So we have a ton of work to do. By the way, when I'm done with this, it's actually going up for sale. So that and much more on this episode of Drive Protect. As you can see, despite being an incredibly rare and coveted car, it's absolutely filthy and downright neglected. The seat track has spider webs and cigarette ash, the floor has pebbles and junk, the door kick panel is moldy and all scratched up, then there's leaves and twigs inside the door jambs, black oily residue on the armrest of the leather door, scratches and swirls on all the black interior trim, dirt kind of like squished into the seams of the seats, gas tank was full of mold, the hood jambs were growing moss. I could go on for another 2 minutes. But the really concerning part is the paint. Notice the heavy swirls on the fenders due to what I believe is a car cover on the paint for years without washing or sort of airing it out. Don't get me wrong, car covers can be great, but not as super long-term protection. It's not a, quote, put it on and forget it for a couple of years type solution, if that makes sense. To be honest, I have a love-hate relationship with doing these types of rare cars, meaning I love to clean them, I love to fix them and see the drastic results of days and sometimes even weeks of work, but I also sort of hate seeing these or any car in this condition to begin with. To me, there's a huge difference between, let's say, a mistake or a spill or an accident or a scratch or something like that, in contrast with just straight up apathy for a car or anything in life. Anyhow, I'll get off my soapbox now, but you guys know the drill. I put Brute and Boost in the foamer, added a little bit of water, gave it a little bit of shake, then let it soak the heavy grime to give me a better chance of washing it away without major agitation. With the heavy amount of grime and mold in all the emblems, door jambs, side and front grills, I used the higher pH level in Titan to help release the heavier amount of junk with a bit of brush agitation. Again, with the paint and the seams still soaking outside, I worked on the mossy engine and jams with Brute in the foamer and of course a few squirts of Titan on the heavier areas before agitation. Now, if you're concerned about the engine and power washing, this totally makes sense, but on most modern cars, it'll be fine with moderate pressure washing. The goal here is to keep your arm speed moving and have the nozzle a little bit farther away than, let's say, you would the paint, and on fan mode. And of course, if you have any issues or you're concerned, just cover up those sensitive areas with a little bit of plastic. In this particular case, the car was so packed with mold and moss and leaves and sticks and twigs or whatever that the pressure was my friend, so it was really helpful here. Once done with the engine, then I rinsed the rest of the exterior. Afterwards, I did a step that I normally don't do on a car that's average clean. I soaked the paint again in this case, but this time I'll agitate the paint with a microfiber towel as I would normally do on a regular car. This thing was so dirty that it just needed a pre-soak first to kind of loosen up the grime to make the next step a whole lot easier. Afterwards, rinsed again, a very heavy rinse, that's very important. Then I dried with a microfiber towel, compressed air, and in this case, no hydrates necessary for the drying process if you plan to compound immediately afterwards. Next, I lifted the car and removed the wheels. Gotcha! Wow, look at those hubs. That's why they're sticky. And then replace the lugs when I was done to avoid losing them and to keep the threads with the original lubrication on them. Once fully up in the air, I looked at the undercarriage and it was okay, not totally horrible or really good, so I hit it with Brute and Boost before scrubbing with a large fender wall brush and then power washing the grime away. Same process on the suspension, the rotors, and of course the wheel wells. Once all the wheels were off, I used plum and a wheel brush for the spokes. Now, don't be afraid to get your fingers into the tight spots that the brush may not be able to hit, or you need a little bit more agitation than the brush can actually provide. I usually do this with my hand inside a wheel mitt. I do the bigger areas with the wheel mitt, but at the same time, I try to get my fingers into the tight spots as well. With the front looking much better, flip the wheel around and start over once again. The inner barrels and the backside of the spokes tend to be way worse than the front, so take your time. Now, the one part that's always there, you're not really going to clean it with normal detailing methods, is the wheel weight sticker. Super annoying. The quick way to remove it and to avoid destroying your fingernails is to use a rubber wheel on an electric drill. Once the majority is removed, then you can clean up the leftover glue bits with rapid remover and a towel. Once it looked absolutely perfect, I then coated it with Gelée Pro wheel coating to make it much easier to clean in the future. With all 4 wheels curing, I decided to clay the paint to make my final polishing a bit cleaner. Now, I should have done this earlier, but I only noticed heavy contamination at this point, so I addressed it now. To do this quickly, now I added foam to a bottle of water, gave it a little bit of a shake, and then of course added it to the paint, and then I could clay the areas that really needed it badly. Okay, before we polish the car, we want to get a quick reading. And pretty much everywhere on the hood, on the back, and some of the fenders, the door, right around 6. So we have a little bit to work with, but if you look right here, it gets much thinner. We're down to about 3 mils. So in this area is probably the most amount of damage, so I have to do the most correction or the most compounding. So in my mind, with 3, basically 4, I don't have a whole lot of room to play with, so this is going to be a concern. The moral of the story is before you polish a car, especially one that's this rare, you really want to know what you have for depth. First, I tested the yellow foam pad and polish to stay with the least aggressive method possible. As it turns out, this paint is incredibly soft, which makes sense after seeing the level of damage from the car cover. Now, that worked really well, but I did need a little bit more cut because of all these scratches, so we switched to a microfiber cutting pad and the blue compound. As you can see here, after the cut, the scratches on the door were all gone, but the compounding swirls were everywhere. Again, this is totally normal. Okay, at this point, we're doing a little bit of our preliminary test. And I have to say, this is a relatively tricky paint, I think because it's so rare, or maybe the way they painted it, I don't know, I'm just extrapolating. But over the years, I've done, I think one other car that this reminds me of, it was an old Porsche Boxster, and I had to use water because of the same issue. Now, the issue we're running into, of course, is residue. There's a ton of residue, a ton of paint, when I say paint, I mean clear coat, coming off and getting stuck in the pad. What happens is, it's incredibly hard to polish out, meaning the second part. So when we're cutting paint that is incredibly soft, super easy. You see how fast that was? I'm using a wool pad, using some blue, went right through, not a problem. And you can see afterwards, there's a lot of swirls left over, totally normal. Now, the trick is, how do you remove those swirls? Because there's so much residue coming off, the trick that seems to be working here is I'm using a yellow pad with yellow polish. You first have to prime the pad really well, then make sure all the pores are full. Then you're gonna blow it out and then put one little tiny dot, just the tiniest little dot. The reason we do that is because you don't wanna have so much polish that it's scouring the paint again, coming off, filling it up, and sort of creating swirls. So at this point, this is the process that we're gonna do. Like I always say, it's time to put on some headphones and just do the rest of the car. To remove the compounding swirls, you'll first have to prime a yellow pad. To do that, you put 4 lines in opposite sides, run it on speed 2 or so for a few seconds on the paint, and this will spread a thin layer throughout the pad. Then you can either add more polish, or in this unique case, I simply blew out the pad and then added the tiniest, tiny little dot of polish because the paint, again, is incredibly soft. Now, to get to all the tight spots, especially underneath the hardtop, we'd have to remove the hardtop. Dan, myself, and Dave, you guys remember who that is. That's the central vac guru from the studio build videos. We lifted up the top and put it on the stand behind the vehicle. If you're wondering, Dave is here because he's doing the yearly maintenance on the central vac system. Once we were off and running with the compounding, take a look at the difference with respect to the scratches removed, 100 times better. Now, with that being said, the front quarter panels were making me a little bit nervous. They may not be so easy because they were really bad. Plus, there's not a whole lot of paint there, but the before shots further emphasized just how awful the paint looked and how hard it was to work with. Now, looking at the 50/50, you can see that after compounding, the scratches and the swirls, all that stuff is out, not a big deal. But now we get into the hard part of polishing or refining. That's where it really gets tricky. Then I finished up, of course, with the yellow pad, yellow polish, and it looked 1,000 times better than when it came in. While I was playing with the last 5 or 6% of the paint, Dan disassembled the side grills and hand polished with flits on the metal trim before touching up all the rock chips with the needle and syringe method. After the touch-up dried and with the paint nearly perfect, I applied AMMO Reflex Pro to protect our work and to increase the depth and shine, especially on soft black paint like this one. With the first layer curing, we then focused on the interior. Now, normally I do the interior first and sometimes I switch. In this case, because I'm gonna do 2 coats, because it's so soft and because it's black, I decided to do one first, do the interior, and then do the second one later. Then on the inside, we had to polish all the black trim pieces with the nano, yellow pad, and yellow polish in a similar process to the exterior. Afterwards, vacuum to pick up the loose junk on the floors, seat seams, and so on. Then all the seats were cleaned with lather and an interior brush before tackling the oiled driver's side armrest. With the Z8 coming back to life, we reinstalled the wheels and then added another layer of Gelée Pro because we installed the first coat on the previous day. Then we added mud to the tires and removed the old window stickers with a razor blade extension before cleaning the glass thoroughly, which was in desperate need after so many years. Now, by the time we finished 2.5 days later, the before and after was absolutely insane, and without a doubt, we increased its overall value on the used specialty car market. Well, guys, we are all done, and this thing looks absolutely spectacular. The inside's 100 times better. The outside's 1,000 times better than what it was. The only thing left to do is to reveal it to the new owner. Just keep in mind, he purchased this with the plan of selling it. I'll put a link in the description if you're interested in acquiring this absolutely ridiculously rare vehicle. As always, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Hey, what's up?
Hey, Larry, how you doing, man?
Come on in.
Good to see you.
Good to see you. There you go.
God.
What do you think?
Whoa. That is not the same car.
I know, right?
Whoa.
Yeah, so the paint was incredibly soft, hence the the scratches that were on the front and the cover or whatever was causing the issue. And so to get through them was pretty simple, but to polish them out, kind of a challenge.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a grime-covered green, black.
Yeah, all the seams in here, all the gas tank door had like green things growing out of it. It was kind of cool.
I was like embarrassed to drop it off. It's like I didn't do it, but I felt guilty.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like guilt by association.
Do you know how many people drop a car off and they wash it before they bring it here?
Oh,
I just want to wash it.
I just want to clean it a little bit.
I just think that's what I do.
Wow, that is really cool.
Good.
That is really cool. Thank you.
You got it.
Thank you. This is fantastic. I absolutely love it.
I love it.